The life of a superhero is far from easy, and in the movie Spider-Man: Homecoming, Peter Parker learned 3 big lessons about what it really means to be a superhero. Let's talk about it.
You gotta get better at this part of the job.
Oh, hey, guys.
Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my theological analysis for Spider-Man: Homecoming. With Far From Home coming out real soon, I thought it'd be fun to dive back into one of my favorite Spider-Man movies. Tom Holland is definitely, so far, my favorite live-action actor to play Spider-Man. So I was excited to dive back into this movie and look at the top 3 big lessons that he learned about what it really means to be a superhero. What lessons do you think he learned in becoming a superhero? Leave that in the comments. Lesson 1, look before you leap. Wise people think before they act. Fools don't, and even brag about their foolishness.
You want to be a high school dropout?
I am so far beyond high school right now.
That's a huge part of Peter Parker's journey in this first one, is learning to look before he leaps, because he's constantly not doing that. I mean, it opens in that fun little montage where he finally gets out of school, he finally gets to be himself and be Spider-Man and try to save the world, and he goes to stop that car thief. Problem is, that dude wasn't no car thief, and if Spider-Man had kind of just hung back for just 1 second more, he would have seen that wasn't a car thief. Instead, it was a little bit embarrassing that he jumps out and knocks this dude's head against the car, and it's his own flippin' car. And this kind of persists and gets bigger and bigger. Yeah, that bank was being robbed, and somebody should have stopped it, but Spider-Man jumped in there without thinking about it, and before you know it, that weapon is blowing up the front of the bank, shoots the deli across the street. I mean, it was a powerful weapon. Another place he's clearly leaping before he even looks, the glowy thing. The whole story around that glowy thing here is foreign alien material. Granted, he might not know that it's alien, but he looks at this glowing purple rock and knows it's something different. Has a suspicion it has to do with these new and crazy weapons that are being sold. But here he is, tying himself up in this high-tech weapons thing and stuff like that without really thinking about it, without really counting that cost. And he gets caught by the Vulture, dropped from the sky into the water, takes Iron Man's drone suit to save him, but then he takes that glowy purple thingy without fully knowing what it is and just carries it with him everywhere. It ends up in Washington, D.C., in the monument. Big explosion. All kinds of trouble.
Our safety systems are working.
The safety systems are completely failing.
We're very safe in here.
The occupants are in imminent mortal danger.
That scene was flippin' awesome and hysterical, but the point is, because he was leaping before he looked, I mean, he should have left that thing at home, or he should have put it somewhere else safe, but instead they took something that they didn't understand and took it with them all the way to Washington, D.C. Man, the last place where this really happens was where he blows that boat in half. But even when the FBI showed up, maybe that should have been a cue, jump over the edge and get out of everybody's way, hide somewhere else on the boat, let the FBI take care of this, but he continues to fight and ends up webbing a gun that he doesn't understand, and Vulture even says,
"You're messing with things you don't understand."
That was a lot of imminent mortal danger that he put a lot of people into, and you could shift blame here, there, and everywhere, but if Spider-Man had never showed up, the FBI was there, and the FBI was there because of Tony Stark. Could Tony Stark have communicated a little bit better with Peter? Yes, an argument can definitely be made for that. Nonetheless, Peter learned some valuable lessons throughout this movie. Count that cost before jumping in. Look before leaping. Lesson number 2, trust good authority over you. Obey your spiritual leaders and do what they say. Their work is to watch over your souls, and they are accountable to God. Give them reason to do this with joy and not with sorrow. That would certainly not be for your benefit.
What if somebody had died tonight? Different story, right? Because that's on you. And if you died, I feel like that's on me.
Iron Man is a fantastic mentor for Peter Parker because Iron Man has walked the hero's journey. This is a dude who got post-traumatic stress from the first Avengers and began to act out of fear. And out of that fear, he leapt before he looked, and he created Ultron.
There are no strings on me.
His journey is a fantastic journey, and that is what makes him such a great mentor for Peter Parker. He understands all the traps, he understands all the pitfalls, he understands every little thing that Peter Parker could possibly stumble over. He gets this path that Peter Parker has chosen for himself better than anybody else in his life. Tony Stark is a good mentor for Peter and a good figure to be in authority over him. But Peter is kind of full of himself in this one.
Just him treating me like a kid all the time. It's not cool.
But you are a kid.
Yeah, a kid who can stop a bus with his bare hand.
Rather than listening to Tony and hearing Tony's mistakes and learning from Tony's mistakes, he just goes out there and ignores it and makes all of his own. I mean, first off, here is Tony trying to protect him, and he takes his suit to Washington and removes the tracker.
Boy, tracking this lamp.
So that the dude who is accountable to him will not know where he's at or what he's doing. And while they're in there, yes, Tony has a sarcastic personality, so he names things the training wheels protocol. So yes, I get it, okay? It might be a little bit insulting, but there is a reason that those protocols are set and they're not fully open to Peter Parker right now. See, Peter is powerful all on his own, and here Tony is over-equipping this kid with even more stuff.
You have 576 possible web shooter combinations.
Mr. Stark really overdid it.
He cares about Peter Parker, and he wants Peter to be prepared for everything that he could possibly face. And Tony understands he's gotta grow. He's gotta start small, and he has to build up his game. You know, just be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And as he continues to grow and build up his game, that training is gonna make him better and better and stronger and more prepared for the advanced things that exist inside of his suit. But Peter just is so anxious to prove himself that what he ends up doing is acting in complete immaturity and disproves himself when he takes away all the safety protocols, when he rips out the tracker so that he cannot be, followed wherever he goes. And then he ends up again with the boat splitting in half. Even though he already had told Stark about the weapons, and he should have trusted that even though Stark was being sarcastic and may not be the best communicator, Stark has already done everything he can to help him out.
Do you know that I was the only one who believed in you? Everyone else said I was crazy to recruit a 14-year-old kid.
I'm 15.
Of course Stark is gonna listen, but instead of trusting any of that, he is so anxious to prove himself, he jumps into action that he's not even ready to jump into and makes enemies that he's not quite ready to have.
I'll kill you and everybody you love. I'll kill you dead.
And so he ends up, and trying to prove himself desperately, ends up disproving himself and showing that he wasn't quite yet ready. So he learned a valuable lesson to trust those who have authority over him. Lesson number 3, he is something with or without that high-tech suit. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
He learned his own self-worth in this movie. As I've been talking about Peter Parker for this video, I've noticed the biggest thing I'm saying in those other 2 lessons is how much he keeps on pushing himself, almost as if he's trying to outrun something. Maybe he's trying to constantly outrun his own guilt and prove that he is worth something, but he already is worth something. He just had to realize that and see it. When you dive into Civil War, he says this.
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
See, it's not just what he said there, it's the tone in his voice. Do you hear that utter guilt? And that guilt is chasing him down like a hellhound, and it seems that no matter how fast he runs, it's always right there. It's always at his heels, reminding him what he allowed to happen, reminding him that he is a nobody, and now he's got to prove himself. And now here he is trying to prove himself with all that he is, and he's got this outside image of what a superhero looks like. It looks like Tony Stark in a crazy high-tech suit in the Avengers, fighting massive aliens and saving the world and making a real difference. If I could just become an Avenger, if I could just have that high-tech suit, if I could just defeat aliens, if I could just save the entire world from major trouble and be this superhero, I will prove to the world and to myself that I have this worth and I have this value. And as he's sitting there trying to chase down this crazy external illusion, he's only looking at the outside. He's not even seeing the inner struggles that Tony Stark had that led him to the place that he's at. He's just looking at what looks so good to him on the outside, and he's comparing himself to it constantly. So he wrapped up his identity in that suit and said this.
This is all I have. I'm nothing without this suit.
And then Tony Stark finally called him on it.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
And it was in that moment of humbling that he truly began to find himself. His suit gets taken from him. So his focus on being a superhero, his focus on being an Avenger is now gone, and now he's humbled himself. I need to outrun this guilt. I need to fix it. I need to make it right. Me, me, me. And he let that go. And as he began to live out normal high school life and even asking Liz out to the homecoming dance, things began to heal and he began to find that healing. And then when he steps out again as Spider-Man, this is where it's my favorite scene in the entire flippin' movie. When that entire building comes down on him and he's buried and he's screaming for help, and you hear the fear, you hear that vulnerability in his voice as he's crying out for help, but there's nobody there.
No! Please! Hey, please! I'm down here!
This is where he looks in that puddle and sees the reflection of his face next to his Spider-Man mask. Whenever I watch this scene, I can't help but think he's finally forgiven himself for letting that dude go that killed Uncle Ben. He's finally stopped letting that guilt chase him, and he's just let it go. He let go of that punishment he felt he deserved. He let go of the ways he thought he needed to make things better. He forgave himself that debt and let it go. And in forgiving himself, he found that value that had been in him this entire time, and that strength rose up, and he was able to lift that building up off of himself. Peter Parker learned 3 big lessons in Spider-Man Homecoming. He learned to look before you leap. He learned to trust those that were in authority over him, and he learned to find his own self-worth and that value in himself. He learned a lot of big things that makes him one of the best superheroes that Marvel Comics has to offer. Being a superhero ain't no easy thing, and the biggest key to all of this is humbling himself. It says in 1 Peter, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, so that he may lift you up in due time. So what did you think of Spider-Man Homecoming, and what 3 lessons do you think Spider-Man learned in this movie? Let's talk in the comments. While you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian, hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next theological analysis, ranking video, movie review, or anything else I do here. And if you like what I do here, check out my Patreon. Link is in the description. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.